Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we are going to continue our coverage over Alan Davis' run. Now, early on in his run, you had Alan Davis do a lot of groundwork to kind of lay out different things that he wanted to tackle in later books down the road. Now, of course, as we dive back into our coverage over Excalibur, we have to pick up with issue number 45, where we actually pick up with Nightcrawler and the TechNet group. Now, we had actually talked about the TechNet group before. You see, they are a group of mercenaries that come from different realities across Marvel's multiverse. Now, with that being said, they were being led by a character known as Gatecrasher. Now, when it came to TechNet, they were actually assigned to go after the Phoenix, and they got this assignment by Opal Luna Saturnine. She wanted to capture the Phoenix, but the problem was they failed to actually achieve their goal. Now, because they did fail, you had Opal Luna say, because you failed to capturing the Phoenix, you are now going to be permanently banned or permanently placed on the main Marvel Universe Earth as a punishment. You are not allowed to go back to your own realities. Now, after getting punished, you then had Excalibur allow the TechNet group to move in with them. Now, by this point in our coverage over Alan Davis' run on Excalibur, he has all the different members of Excalibur going on their own separate adventures. Now, I want to shift our focus over to Nightcrawler. And the reason why, because when it comes to Nightcrawler, he was actually left behind at the lighthouse to get a chance to heal up after getting a beatdown from Captain Britain in our last video. And really, you should check out our last video to see how in the world those two got into a battle against each other. Either way, while you have Nightcrawler at the lighthouse resting, he was confronted by Dave Thomas and Miss Witherspoon. Now, we had talked about Dave Thomas before. Dave Thomas is actually a detective in London. Now, when it comes to Witherspoon, she has the ability to predict when different crimes are going to be committed across Great Britain. Now, recently, somebody has been going around stealing different valuable items, but the problem is you have all these different groups trying to catch this one criminal, but the problem is no one has been able to actually do it. And so when it came to Dave Thomas, he came over to the lighthouse looking for Excalibur, but he only found Nightcrawler in the TechNet group. And you had Dave say, hey Nightcrawler, if your team cannot help out, then just use them, because right now Great Britain needs the help of Excalibur. And so you have Nightcrawler being able to form his own team here, better known as the Endmen. And so as we get into the early page of Excalibur issue number 45, we actually pick up with Nightcrawler and the Endmen trying to get ready to catch the criminal who has been going around stealing different valuable items. But the problem is, once again, they're a tad bit too late. They did see the item move, but the problem is they couldn't see the person who was moving the item. It seemed like he is just invisible. Now, while you have our heroes inside the building, they're then confronted by another character, and that would be Micromax. Now, we had talked about him in our last video. Micromax is a new creation at this point in Marvel Comics who works for a government agency in Great Britain known as FI6. Now, they were also trying their best to catch the criminal as well. But as you see right here, both teams had basically failed. But now you have both teams blaming each other. Now that is the moment you didn't have Dave Thomas come out to confront the leader of FI6. And that would be Inky Blot. And honestly, that name kind of sucks, but Inky Blot is the actual leader of FI6. And we do learn that him and Dave Thomas, they do have some bad blood between each other. And so we do see the two characters going back and forth when it comes to who has the right to work this case. Is it Dave Thomas or is it Inky? But now we have to jump over to Captain Britain. Now, at the end of our last video, we saw that he was arrested by the Captain Britain Corps. Now remember, the Captain Britain Corps is a group in Marvel Comics where in each reality across Marvel's multiverse, you have a Captain Britain in all those different realities. And their goal is to work together to protect Marvel's multiverse. Now, the reason why our Captain Britain was arrested at the end of our last video is because, you see, you have to follow the laws of your reality. And so when it came to our Brian Braddock, when he fought against Nightcrawler, they said you assaulted that man and you broke the law of your own world. Now, they also try to add in other charges as well, but either way, at the end of the trial, they said, you know what, your punishment is death. You have to go. And so we actually see Captain Britain trying his best to protect himself, but then at the very last second, you have Opal Luna Saturnine walk in. Now, when she walks in, everyone stops. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, she was not actually in charge of Otherworld. You see, around this time, Lady Roma was the one in charge of Otherworld. And matter of fact, you had Roma give a note over to Saturnine and said, hey, listen, this whole trial is going to stop. You are going to leave that Captain Britain alone from Earth 616 because honestly, I need him for something else. But getting back over to the lighthouse, we actually pick up with Dave Thomas requesting the other members of Excalibur to help out with this situation of his. But the problem is you have Nightcrawler tell him that he has no way into actually reach the other members of Excalibur, especially Captain Britain, who's not even on that reality at the moment. Now, that is the moment where you do have Witherspoon tell everyone in the room that another crime is going to be committed very soon. And so Nightcrawler and his team must get ready to stop that criminal next. But here's the problem. You see, while you have Nightcrawler talking to Dave Thomas, he realized that the TechNet group, his end men, are actually arguing with one another. But that is the moment where he has a flashback to his early days of being an X-Men, where he would also argue with his teammates as well. And now he understands what Charles Xavier went through back in those days when Charles first put that team together. But now we can have a proper conversation about Otherworld. Now, we had talked about Otherworld in our other videos over the X-Men when it came to Dawn of X, Reign of X, and Fall of X. When it comes to Otherworld, it's kind of like this dimension at the very center of Marvel's multiverse, where it is actually connected to all realities across Marvel's multiverse. Now, with that being said, we also learned a tad bit about the powers of Captain Britain as well. You see, we had learned early on in our coverage over Excalibur is that when it comes to Captain Britain, if he stays away from Great Britain for too long, he'll begin to lose his powers. And the reason why, because in Otherworld, there's a thing called the Energy Matrix. Now, the Energy Matrix has the ability to give all Captain Britons in all realities their powers. But here's the catch though. You see, when it comes to the Energy Matrix, it makes sure that power is only shared in all realities version of Great Britain. And so when it comes to Captain Britain, if he wants to use his abilities, he has to be in Great Britain. But if he tries to leave Great Britain, he'll begin to lose his abilities. Now, we're also told that his suit has the ability to kind of absorb the Energy Matrix, kind of like a backup just in case he does have to go away from Great Britain. But just like his powers, that power is also gonna go away as well. And so now we know that in the far future, if he does leave Great Britain, there is a point where he might lose his abilities until he goes back to Great Britain to recharge. But now we jump over to Megan and also Rachel Summers. Now, these two characters are currently going on an adventure to France to hopefully find the parents of Megan. Now, here's the thing. they are actually walking over to France. They're not trying to fly over there by using the powers of the Phoenix, because remember, around this time in Marvel Comics, Rachel Summers was the Phoenix. Either way, when it comes to Rachel and Megan, they're walking to France, and Megan has no idea why in the world they're walking to France and not using the powers of the Phoenix. And you have Rachel say, listen, when we had stopped by your friend's house, I realized that when I don't use the abilities of the Phoenix, I begin the process of regaining my memories from my past. Because remember, for Rachel Summers, she comes from the Days of Future Past timeline. But when she had arrived in this timeline, she kind of forgot everything about her timeline. Not completely, but most of the different pieces of her past in that timeline. And so she's telling us that when she does turn off the powers of the Phoenix, she begins to remember everything from her past. And she kind of wants to see where that actually goes. But getting back over to Nightcrawler and his Endmen, we do see them being able to figure out who was going around stealing the different objects in Great Britain, and some kind of creature. Now, you have our heroes being able to take the creature down, but then our heroes realize that this creature is actually mindless. It does not have a mind of its own. Now, you do have our heroes try their best to figure out who was trying to control the creature, trying to find the person who was controlling the creature. But the thing is, when they do find a way to contact the controller, he was able to cut the connection from the creature, so our heroes cannot find him. But then after that, the creature is then shrunk down in size into a doll. And so you then have our heroes wondering what in the world is possibly going on here. Now, in our last video, we had talked about another reality known as Earth 148. Now, that Earth was not really called Earth, it was called Eroth. But in that reality, we have met two characters, Kylun and also Princess Satnine. Now, those two characters were trying their best to lead a rebellion against another character known as Nekrom. Now, Nekrom is going to be very important for this video and the next one as well. But Nekrom was able to take over the entire planet. And so you have Kylun and Princess here trying their best to lead a rebellion against him. But as we dive into the second chapter for this video, we do learn that Nekrom was able to take over the minds of the heroes of this reality. Now, the heroes of this reality are all dead, and so they're really just mindless creatures who are servants for Nekrom to fight against the rebellion. Now, you have the princess trying her best to take out Nekrom, where, of course, their battle does go back and forth, and it does seem like each character might kill one another. Now, the princess, she is killed off by Nekrom, and really Nekrom is almost killed off by the princess, but also because of Kylun as well. And really, this is a sad moment for Kylun. Something else I forgot to mention is that Kylun was actually very close to the princess, and we're going to learn more about that kind of relationship down the road. But either way, for Kylun, he does chase after Nekrom, who is trying to get away after being severely injured thanks to the princess. Except when it comes to Kylun, he sees Nekrom go through a door and he follows Nekrom through that door. And he was able to be teleported back into the main Marvel universe. Except when he walks through the door, well, he arrived in the bathroom of the lighthouse, the home for Excalibur, where Nightcrawler was just trying to brush his teeth after taking a shower. And so you have Nightcrawler trying his best to survive, but then you have Kylun realize that Nightcrawler is speaking English, and so he stops to attack Nightcrawler and realize that he's from this reality, that he's finally back home. But now we can shift our focus over to Rachel Summers and Megan, who are still on their way over to France, but they do find a random mansion on top of a hill. A creepy mansion, or a creepy castle to be more exact. Either way, they're then confronted by Dracula and Frankenstein. Now you already know that this is not Dracula, because if he does pop up, you already know things are about to get a whole lot worse. And so this is not the real Dracula, but at first you have our heroes believe it could be the real one. And really, you have Dracula being able to tell Megan to show her true form. Now, her true form is apparently the Goblin Princess form, and we saw this form all the way back in X-Men Inferno when she became the Goblin Princess because all of New York was being affected by the Inferno event. Now that was a long time ago for Excalibur, but this is Alan Davis doing another callback when he had worked with Chris Claremont in the early days of Excalibur. Now you have Rachel realize that something is off about Dracula and Frankenstein, where she is able to knock both of them out just like that, and they change back into regular people. And so it seemed like they were able to play some kind of illusion game on our heroes. But then you have Megan realize there's someone else nearby, and that is when she finds a creature that looks somewhat similar to Megan's other form. Now, we jump back over to Nightcrawler at the lighthouse, where we're able to learn more about Kai Lun. Now, Kai Lun actually first appeared back in Excalibur number 2. So let me explain. So back in Excalibur number 2, there was a young boy known as Colin McKay. Now Colin McKay was a young boy on the run trying to get away from a crime lord known as Vixen. Another character we talked about in the early days of Chris Claremont run on Excalibur. Either way, while on the run, he found Widget. Now as we all know, Widget has the ability to open up portals to allow people to travel into other realities. And so when Colin found Widget, he was teleported into another reality, Earth 148, or the Earth better known as Eroth. Now, he first arrived there, he was able to meet the princess and the rest of the royal family. And at first, they loved the guy because to them, him appearing was kind of like a good omen, meaning that good things were going to come down the road for the planet. And he was actually able to marry the princess. But the problem was, right after they got married, well, that was when Nekrom attacked the planet, destroying the entire world. And so, as we all know, he then led a rebellion to get rid of Nekrom, but he chased Nekrom back over into this reality. And something else I do want to mention is that Kai Lun is actually a mutant. So when he grew up, his actual mutation kicked in, where he did turn into this kind of werewolf looking character. Now, things does get a tad bit crazier when it comes to the whole idea of Kai Lun arriving back into this reality. You see, he left this reality when he was a young boy, and so many years have passed by. But except while many years passed by on Earth 148, only 1 year passed in the main Marvel universe. Now, for Nightcrawler, he also tells Kai Lun that when it comes to Nekrom, he's been here for a few months. And so apparently when Nekrom went through the door first before Kai Lun did, he was already on Earth for 6 months, even though it was mere seconds that Kai Lun followed Nekrom through the door. That mere seconds led into months between him arriving into the main Marvel universe. Either way, you have Nightcrawler agree to help him find Nekrom and bring him down. But getting back over to Megan and also Rachel Summers, we do learn that the creature they found is called a Nuri. Now, a Nuri is a race of creatures that have the ability to use magic. Now, many years ago, and I'm talking about many years ago, they had left this reality to go into another dimension. But every once in a while, they would come back to the Earth to see how things had changed. Now, when it came to this Nuri, when it came back, it found a group of people in trouble in the middle of the blizzard, and he was able to use his magic as a way to save those people. The problem was, after doing that, they enslaved him and made him use his magic as a way to make them more gold and other kind of stuff to help please them. And those two guys we saw earlier belonged to the same family that had been enslaving him this entire time. Now, this Nuri is also able to show Megan and Rachel a different plane of reality, better known as, and I know I am going to mispronounce this, but better called the Alashra, and I really hope I pronounced that correctly. Now, the Alashra is a different plane where you are allowed to see life energy. And so when it comes to Megan, she looks beautiful on this plane right here. Now, Megan, she does look somewhat cute, but Megan's true form looks beautiful. Now, you have the Nuri tell Megan that there is probably a good reason why these two characters had met, but either way, this Nuri has to move on. It is dying after being here so long as a slave. And so you have Rachel and Megan say goodbye to this creature. But getting back over to the lighthouse, we do see that some things are happening in the lighthouse. So for example, you have Kai Lun and Nightcrawler realize that, well, Widget is now beginning to grow a body. But things get even crazier because then out of nowhere, there's a loud boom sound. And when you have our heroes turn around, they're now confronted by a different kind of creature. But as we get into the final chapter for today's video, we do learn what this creature is. As a matter of fact, it's an alien from the Shi'ar Empire. Now remember, the Shi'ar Empire is technically an empire that rules over many planets in the universe, but each planet is its own particular race. And so when it comes to the Shi'ar Empire, it's made up of many races. And so we do learn that this creature is actually wearing an armor suit, and she takes it off, and we learn that her name is Cerise. Now this is Alan Davis beginning the process of adding in new members to the Excalibur team like Kai Lun and also Cerise. Now when it comes to her character, we're going to learn more about her character down the road in later books. Now I want to jump back over to R. Brian Braddock, and here's the reason why. So when it comes to R. Brian, he's still in Otherworld, but he's then confronted by another Captain Britain. Now this other Captain Britain does inform Brian that when it comes to Excalibur, they were actually put together by Lady Roma, that she made sure that those 5 heroes would come together to form the superhero team. Now we don't know why, but for Brian, he begins to think back to all the different events that had actually led the team coming together for the first time back in Excalibur #1 because of Lady Roma. She wanted to make sure this team came together. Now, this other Captain Britain, he does inform Brian that when it came to Roma, she made sure to add a small twist to Captain Britain, our Captain Britain, by saying that he would always try to work alongside with the other heroes on Excalibur to make sure the team actually came together. And even if he tried to move away from the team, he would always get pulled back in some kind of way. And so now he realized that Excalibur did not come together in its own organic way. It came together because of Lady Roma. And now Brian wants to know, why in the world did she put this team together for? Now, I want to jump back over to Nightcrawler. Here's the reason why. So you have Nightcrawler being able to hear the story of Cerise, to learn where she's actually from. Now, like I said earlier, she is from the Shi'ar Empire, but she's from a world from the Shi'ar Empire called Shasko Frukanon. And I really hope I pronounced that whole thing correctly. If not, please forgive me. But she does tell us that she got tired of how society ran on her home world. And so she was trying to use a wormhole to leave her planet, to go to a different planet. But then out of nowhere, she was dragged over here to Earth. Now, while she's telling that story to Nightcrawler, well, you didn't have Widget being able to open up another portal to allow more people from a different reality to come into the main Marvel universe. But I want to jump back over to Captain Britain. And the reason why, because you have Captain Britain, our Captain Britain, being able to meet up with Lady Roma. Now, he wants to know why in the world was Excalibur put together for. Now, she does tell him that the reason why they were put together was to fight against evil. But the problem is she has no idea what kind of evil. Now, she also tells us that her father has started something and it's up to her to actually finish it. Now, for Captain Britain, he does inform Lady Roma that the Excalibur team did have a run-in with Merlin, her father, a while back. And we had actually skipped over that story. Just know that our heroes did run into Merlin, but for Roma, she can't believe they did because to her, he's no longer around. And so once she's able to access the mind of Captain Britain, that is when she realized that he is telling the truth, that Merlin is up to something. He's becoming very direct. But the question is right now, what is he actually up to? Now, this is where you have Alan Davis begin to wrap up some loose ends so that we are able to move into the next story arc. So let me explain. So when it comes to Alan Davis, he does inform us that the TechNet group is going to leave. You see, the other people that Widget had brought into this reality had made a deal with TechNet. They now have a new contract, and so now they're going to leave to finish that contract. And so there goes TechNet. They're now out of the picture. Now, after they leave, you have all members of Excalibur come back except for Kitty Pryde. Now, for Nightcrawler, he does explain things to Rachel, Megan, and Brian about what happened recently at the lighthouse, and also how Excalibur now has new members to their team, Cerise and also Kai Lund. Now the question is right now, where is Kitty Pryde? And you have Nightcrawler say, oh, well, she's in Ireland with Alistair. And let's not forget, that happened in our last video because Alistair was looking for Rachel. He is so madly in love with her, but unfortunately, she was not around. She was with Megan. And so Kitty Pryde, who also has a crush on Alistair, took Rachel's place. And currently, they're in Ireland. And to wrap up today's video, we do pick up with Kitty Pryde and also Alistair. And we see them with a team of people currently at some dig site. And their goal is to dig up some kind of chamber that they had found. Except you have Kitty Pryde scan the chamber. And that is when she realized there's somebody inside there. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.